They say it's not presidential to call up these massive leaders of business. I think it's very presidential. And if it's not presidential, that's okay. That's okay, because I actually like doing it.
Donald Trump speaking at the Carrier plant in Indianapolis this week after working out a deal to keep 1,000 jobs there from moving to Mexico. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Monica Crowley, editor and columnist for the Washington Times. Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Lisa Lerer, who covers politics for the Associated Press. And from the Wall Street Journal, Kimberley Strassel. Well, Kim, you're a member of that Wall Street Journal editorial board that wrote that editorial that we just talked to Kellyanne Conway about, the Carrier shakedown. What about the argument that, look, this was a powerful, symbolic message that President Trump is going to have American workers' backs, and then when he gets into office in a month, that then he can begin macroeconomic changes like cutting taxes and rolling back regulation?
Look, I agree with all of that. I think politically this was very, very smart. This was a campaign promise he made, and he fulfilled it. I'm just saying economically, this is not really the way you want to run an economy. We just had a president who for 8 years decided that they were going to politically allocate capital in the country, pick winners and losers. We were very critical of him for doing that, Solyndra et al. This is a similar version of this. Look, these companies are not leaving the United States because they're anti-American or they want to stick it to Indiana. They're following the laws of economics. It's too expensive to do business here. So Mr. Trump has a choice. He can go from company to company, thousands of them, and sort of beat all of them into submission and threaten them with tariffs, or focus, and I think that this is what he is going to do, on macroeconomic policy like cutting taxes and cutting back regulations.
But he is also talking about tariffs and punitive taxes. I mean, that's part of, in fact, we should say he's on a Twitter storm this morning, and he's talking about that some
Look,
more.
If you're going to talk about the long-term economy and how you keep businesses here, there's I think a real risk here that if you start doing that and saying that people aren't going to build their businesses in the United States in the first place because they'll be too worried about what they have to do if they want to leave. And so, I mean, this is something governors do, but the President of the United States has got more resources to do bigger policy.
I want to play another clip from Mr. Trump's speech at that Cincinnati rally on Thursday night. Here it is.
The era of economic surrender is over. We're going to fight for every last American job. It's time to remove the rust from the Rust Belt and usher in a new industrial revolution. We're going to do it.
We ask you for questions for the panel, and we got this on Twitter from someone named Steelers Slob. For taxpayers, is it better for the government to assist businesses, or is it better for the free market to weed out the weak? Lisa, we should point out that all this happened on the same week that the unemployment rate hit a 9-year low of 4.6%. But how do you answer Steelers Slob?
Well, I think a lot of people...
And I want you to use his name in answering.
Well, Steelers Slob. I think a lot of people in Washington would pick the latter, would say the free market. And you see that in the reaction to this Carrier deal. It wasn't just the Wall Street Journal editorial board that took issue with it. So did Bernie Sanders. So did Larry Summers. So did Sarah Palin. So I think what we are seeing, what Washington can take away from this decision by Mr. Trump is that this is a new brand of politics. This is going to be Trumpism, not Republicanism, not Democratic-ism, but Trumpism. And so I think that's certainly sending a little bit of a chill and a little bit of a sense of foreboding up to the Capitol Hill up there, because people don't quite know what they can expect other than something fairly unpredictable.
Monica, I want to turn to another subject I talked about with Kellyanne, and that was President-elect Trump's phone calls with foreign leaders, especially with the president of Taiwan. You heard the question I asked her. Should he be better briefed? Should he be accepting State Department briefings? Should he be taking the presidential daily brief that most president-elects usually get every day, and Mike Pence is apparently getting every day? Should he be getting all of the briefings he can before he steps into this world of diplomatic nuance?
Well, the president-elect is getting regular briefings from people he trusts, experts like General Flynn, who will be the incoming national security advisor. He's incredibly well briefed before he takes these phone calls. The phone call with the Taiwanese president was a congratulatory phone call. My understanding, it was only about 10 minutes. They discussed a range of issues, but I think Donald Trump was elected not to reinforce the status quo, but to shake up the status quo, to challenge the conventional ways ways of doing things. This conversation, look, Donald Trump understands the one China policy very well. There will be plenty of time to discuss the whole range of issues regarding China and the Pacific Rim once he is sworn in. But what he also understands is that it is important for the president-elect and then the president of the United States to stand for freedom and to stand with those who challenge those who would oppress them, and that includes the Chinese government. So I don't know what his policy will be with regard to China once he is president of the United States. But what I do know is he felt that it was incredibly important to send a signal that yes, that he will take a whole new look at the range of issues.
So, Juan, are you persuaded by Monica, or, I mean, is the media making too big a deal of these phone calls?
No, but let me just say, I think to his supporters, there's not much that Donald Trump can do at this point that would cause them some offense. I mean, the idea is that we shouldn't take him literally, that he's acting on a symbolic level, whether it's with Carrier or with the phone calls. The problem is that in terms of the journalism, the intelligence community, the national security community, the diplomatic community here in Washington is alarmed by this. We have a one China policy. This has been in place since Richard Nixon. To suddenly go outside of that. You mentioned not taking the daily briefings, but it's also not then consulting with state, for example, the State Department, about how do I prepare to talk if I'm deciding I'm going to do this and I'm going to change the policy. How do I talk to this person in an effective way? We've already seen China file a formal complaint about the call. So clearly it's had an impact there. Even if I was to sit here and say to you, no big deal, it's having an impact in terms of our global relationships. And going forward, there are questions about, well, what about his business dealings, as you know, came up this week, so that you have ethics people here in Washington saying, oh, well, he should make sure that he is totally divested. But Trump has not agreed to that. And when he's meeting with Prime Minister Abe of Japan and brings in his daughter, when he's talking to the British about windmills near his golf courses, people are like, what is going on here?
Well, I think this uproar is totally overwrought, okay? I mean, a lot of this is being driven by State Department functionaries who are very unhappy that Donald Trump is not coming to them and they are not being allowed to formulate all-American policy. By the way, that was what he was elected to do, to a certain extent. And I think the other point is that you got to look at what Donald Trump says, that also what he does. To me, the far more important message that got sent this week to the world was the appointment or the naming of Mad Dog Mattis as Secretary of Defense. Now, if I was Pyongyang or Tehran, that's what I'd be paying attention to, because this is a very clear-eyed general who understands world politics very well and is going to be a lot tougher than this current administration.
All right, but before we end this segment, Lisa, I want to get to you because you were at this forum at Harvard about, rehashing the campaign. How ugly did it get?
It got pretty ugly. I think it's important to talk about what this normally is. This is normally a very staid affair where the campaign managers sip coffee and eat canapes as they discuss their
canapes,
strategy.
That's good right there.
The catering is excellent. As they discuss their strategy for, for the historical record. That's not what this was. This felt almost like a collective nervous breakdown. It wasn't just ugliness between the two campaigns, who really were reduced to shouting on numerous occasions at each other. Republican campaign managers heckled CNN President Jeff Zucker. Pollster Nate Silver came in for some heckling. So there was a lot of tension there, and I think it really shows how raw these divides still are, and it certainly sends a little bit of a foreboding sign for our politics going forward. It doesn't feel like there's going to be an awful lot of kumbaya moments in our future, but maybe we'll all be pleasantly surprised.
30 seconds. Monica, you surprised that the Clinton camp is still so bitter?
They are extremely bitter. I was talking to some people who, on the Trump transition, people who served on the campaign, and I think they're a little surprised that it still remains so raw. The challenge for President-elect Donald Trump, and this was one of his core messages during the campaign, was that he was going to try to unify the country, bring everybody together. I think the one way, the most effective way for him to do that is to create a booming economy. If the economy is roaring, that will likely silence a lot of his critics.
All right, panel, we have to take a break here.